Good afternoon. This is Alan Bird here with you again to talk about the science behind the claims, the Relaxer lawsuit series. So far, we've had about 4 of our episodes talking about the information that we've come about. Today, we're going to begin with Exhibit D, the terminology shift to straighteners and its consequences. We're going to go from 2019 to 2022 because this thing started long before all this controversy behind the uterine cancer study. First of all, I want to make sure that you all understand that the NIH has 0 regulatory authority. They are a research arm of the HHS. The FDA is the actual regulatory authority within the HHS that regulates cosmetics. The reason this is so important is that as researchers, it's their job to research products and to come up with public health suggestions in order to mitigate or reduce risk for certain diseases. So what we have here is an extreme overstep. For whatever reason, I don't know why, but in 2019, these researchers decided to reclassify, rename, and combine all these different modulants that are used to straighten hair. So let's get into this here. All right, so the foundational shift. In 2019, NIH researchers published a paper in the International Journal of Cancer examining hair dye and chemical hair product use. In that study, the authors declared chemical treatments used permanently or semi-permanently to straighten or relax hair, henceforth referred to as straighteners, contain a mixture of chemicals including formulations which carcinogen formaldehyde is present. This sentence marked a turning point. For the first time, NIH researchers collapsed 2 distinct product categories: hydroxide-based relaxers, just sodium hydroxide, thioglycolates, and calcium hydroxide, and Brazilian keratin treatments containing formaldehyde under one umbrella label: straighteners. Now, the reason this was so damaging, again, as I stated earlier, is that the NIH has 0 authority to regulate anything. They absolutely have 0 authority to rename a product and category, because now how are they going to test that particular product against an FDA database or any other research or peer review papers if you totally taken a name and changed it? One of the things about epidemiology study is that they have to have consistent naming and consistent categories so that they can look across time to tell if there's any changes, positive or negative. They didn't do either of that. This blew up the whole thing. So now the word straightener can mean either relaxer or can mean a smoother system. Those are 2 distinctly different risk factors, supposedly, because one is supposed to be skin absorption and the other one is inhalation, formaldehyde. But they put it in one thing: straighteners. So now the authors admitted within the paper, within this study in 2019, they admitted these things. Number 1, sodium hydroxide and thioglycolates are active ingredients and relaxers are not carcinogenic in humans. So they made sure that they let you know that the sodium hydroxide and relaxers, calcium hydroxide and thioglycolates, are non-carcinogenic in humans. So that says the relaxers are safe, right? But now they put them together, it's like guilt by association. Secondly, they admitted that the Black woman study, the largest culturally specific cohort of nearly 59,000 Black women, has shown null associations for relaxer use only. They admit this in their study in 2019, that the Black woman study showed null associations when it was just relaxer. They admitted this: the only reason their findings diverged from Black women's health study was because the NIH cohort included keratin treatments, which were not on the market when Black women study exposures were measured. So think about that. Think about that. They're saying we create this new category called straighteners. And if you look at a prior epidemiology study that's studying relaxers, our answer is going to be different from theirs because they just talked about relaxers. But we create this whole new definition and category called straighteners. And because we included keratin treatment in there, now our answer could be different. And if it's different, here's why. But again, you gotta be able to read the details, not just the headlines. Check this out. They explicitly noted the discrepancy may reflect changes in chemical formulation, pointing to the introduction of Brazilian keratin treatments containing formaldehyde in the early 2000s. This is crazy if you think about it. They admitted all of this within the study. All of this. But the headlines didn't say that. Okay? So at the same time of the 2019 study, they made a second critical change: redefining frequent use. Historically, epidemiology studies and cultural practice recognize frequent relaxer use as 7 to 10 times a year. That's about right, about 8 times a year. Every 8 weeks, you figure that's 6 times. If you're getting a partial or something, you may go, 7 or maybe 10 if you're getting a partial every 3 weeks. But on an average, about 6 to 8 times a year, like say about 2 months. About 2 months in between a retouch. They went from 7 to 10 times per year, consistent with salon visits every 6 to 8 weeks. The NIH reduced the threshold to equal to less than 4 times a year, essentially once a quarter, or about 2 hours of exposure per year. Thus, within a single paper, the NIH did 2 permanently altering things in the discourse. They expanded the product definition by including formaldehyde-based keratin treatments, and then they lowered the frequency definition by redefining frequent use downward. Both changes increased the likelihood of producing risk signals where none existed when prior studies were only questioned just for relaxers. Public amplification. Here's the key now, okay? Now, this was in the study. Now, because, again, I'm a chemist, I know what's supposed to be in there, I'm going to read the whole study. And so I found all this stuff buried in the study. But what did you guys get? What did the public get? What was the statement, the front-facing statement? Well, in 2019, the NIH press release on December the 4th, 2019, the NIH issued a press release titled "Permanent Hair Dye and Straighteners May Increase Breast Cancer Risk." See how crazy that is? They took relaxer, included formaldehyde releasing keratin treatments, and now they just call straighteners. And all of a sudden, what you all saw was that straighteners may increase breast cancer risk. The release highlighted Alexandra Weiss and Dale Sandler presenting their findings as evidence that straighteners may increase breast cancer risk. Critically, the release did not clarify that straightener category now included Brazilian keratin products with formaldehyde. To the public, the word straighteners may have meant relaxers, because within the studies and within their talking, they would say hair straighteners are relaxers, or hair straighteners and relaxers. So they would know how to kind of throw that word in there to kind of have you think that, okay, well, that means relaxer. The straightener part kind of blends in the background. The effect was predictable. Media headlines, consumer fear, and ultimately litigation, all premised on the belief that sodium hydroxide relaxers, long used in Black communities, had been shown to cause cancer. The NIH's own admission about non-carcinogenic relaxer chemistry and the role of keratin treatments were buried in a technical text and omitted from public communications. It's crazy, guys. The reiteration. So 2019, with the breast cancer was when they started. Came back again in 2021 with the ovarian cancer paper. By 2021, the terminology shift was no longer new, it was normalized. Carcinogen paper on ovarian cancer, White then and colleagues carried forward the same categorical redefinition. Relaxers, keratin treatments, and even pressing tools were again grouped together under a single label, straighteners. This is when it came in with the pressing tools as well, because they didn't quite get the sensation that they may have wanted, or maybe the association wasn't as strong as they wanted. So they're like, hey, listen, let's add something else in there. Call it, because now that we went away from just relaxer and say a straightener, we can keep just throwing different modulants in there, and here you go. Maybe we'll get the answer we want. The ovarian cancer paper acknowledged the methodological risk of misclassification, but proceeded with the same exposure grouping anyway. The henceforth declaration in 2019 had become institutionalized in practice. All future analysis would treat chemically distinct products as one category. Why does this matter? The sequence is clear. 2019, breast cancer study. NIH first defined the category, admitting relaxers alone are not carcinogenic, acknowledged the Black woman study showed no results, and lowered the definition of frequent use. 2019 again, the press release. They amplified the rebranded category to public without distinction, allowing the public to conflate relaxers with carcinogenic keratin products. 2021, they reiterated and cemented the redefinition by lowering the use of threshold to 4 times a year, ensuring misclassification became a standard practice in subsequent epidemiology studies, including the 2022 uterine cancer study. The result was not an accident of science. This was a conscious rebranding by the NIH leadership that blurred product lines, lowered thresholds, and buried key admissions about the non-carcinogenic nature of relaxers. The linguistic and methodological shift created a foundation for later claims of cancer risk that were never supported by culturally accurate or chemically specific data. Bottom line, from 2019 forward, NIH epidemiologists rebranded relaxers and keratin products as straighteners, admitted the positive signal came from formaldehyde keratin treatments, and simultaneously lowered the definition of frequent use to 4 times a year. These twin shifts, expanding the exposure category and lowering the exposure threshold, manufactured an artificial risk signal. The NIH's own scientists admitted sodium hydroxide, thioglycolates, and calcium hydroxide are non-carcinogenic, and that the Black woman study found no results in relaxers. Yet these factors were buried while NIH told the public that straighteners increase cancer risk. This is not clarity. This is a misclassification by design. So since I've been doing this study, these exhibits, I'm continuing to research. I mean, we got literally from A to Z, it's over 100 pages. Now it's up to 115 pages of data. I think it's almost 30,000 words I have now. And we've only gotten through D, I think, right? D? Guys, this is the biggest thing that really blew me away from a carcinogenic standpoint. Formaldehyde is not a endocrine blocker. Formaldehyde in its gas forms only creates or is accessible to a nasal cancer. Formaldehyde is not even an issue with these estrogen-dependent cancers. So I don't even know why we're talking about formaldehyde. It's not even relevant in this whole discussion, but somehow formaldehyde has become the boogeyman for relaxers. So number one, relaxers have never had formaldehyde, but even if it did, formaldehyde does not cause uterine, ovarian, or breast cancer because it's a totally different genetic type of cancer. So that's totally irrelevant to what we're talking about. So I want us to really understand the ramifications of this move, the boldness of it, quite frankly, the arrogance of it, because they feel that if we don't look and do our own research and read the actual studies, that they can pass it on by. So I thank you for this one. We're going to dive deeper and further into this in the next exhibit. It's basically a 3-part exhibit on the misclassification, as well as how all of this really pushed relaxers into a whole new category and territory, where all of a sudden it became part of the cancer lawsuit claims. Thank you again. I'm Alan Bird. We'll see you soon.